Karis Cannell, thank you for that. Joining me now is Dante Mills, a civil and criminal attorney and a law professor at Temple University's Beasley School of Law. Kelly Hyman is a trial attorney, and also with us is Michael Bachner. He's a criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor. Dante, starting today, Michael Cohen really had to kind of put his money where his mouth is and add some proof here to some of these claims. Here's one just inkling of what he had to provide going toward the prosecution's argument. He testified, "I wanted to ensure that once again he approved what I was doing because I require approval from him on all of this. Everything required Mr. Trump's sign-off." Do you think that that is enough to go to the question of how much did Donald Trump know about what Michael Cohen was doing, why he was doing it, even later on to the question of how he was being reimbursed and how that was being recorded in the company's books?
It takes them 99% of the way. And I've been saying this about this trial. It seems as if every time they get to the point, the prosecution, where they're about to slam the door on this and make it absolutely clear, there's a little bit of opening left there. And here, Michael Cohen definitely made it clear that Donald Trump cared about the election, that was the purpose he did this. He made it clear that he was aware that this payment was being made, how the payment was being made. The only thing that's still a little undecided is if whether Donald Trump knew how it was being documented in the books. And they've already had the accountant on. So I don't know if the prosecution is going to bring somebody back up to actually seal that point, because Cohen can say, yes, he knew that we had to make this payment and that I was making this payment personally, but does he know how the books were doctored and the fact that the books were doctored in order for the prosecution to really close the door on getting a guilty verdict against former President Donald Trump here? I just don't know if it went that far.
Kelly, I mean, to that point, one of the pieces of evidence that Michael Cohen put on the table is that when Alan Weisselberg was telling Michael Cohen how he would be reimbursed, that after he outlined, what we saw on that piece of paper in Alan Weisselberg's handwriting, he outlined all the line items, the reimbursement, the plus up for taxes, the bonus, etc. Weisselberg went into Trump's office and briefed him about it, and then came back out and said, "We're going to pay you back in 12 installments, not all at once." So he's providing some corroboration that Weisselberg told Trump, or at least they had a conversation about the means of being reimbursed, but it's still Michael Cohen's word. I mean, is that enough for you?
Well, Michael Cohen can make or break the case, but I think it's important to remember that when you look at this case, the key thing is knowledge, intent, and motive. And Michael Cohen has knowledge. He was there in the rooms when the catch and kill was going on. He was there talking to Trump about these stories. He had this knowledge also about the intent. What was the key intent of why they did this, the way in which they did this? Was the fact that Trump was doing this because he was concerned about it affecting his wife, or did he do this because he was in fact concerned about the election? I think that's definitely going to be key, and also the fact that the involvement in regards to the check. But we have to remember that Trump personally signed those checks, and that's definitely key to go to his knowledge that he knew exactly what those amounts were and what they were for.
So, Michael, I want to play for you, I'm sorry, I'm not going to play it for you. It was played for the jury, because I'm sure you've heard it enough times. This is the infamous recording, the only recording that Michael Cohen said that he has ever made of his former boss, Donald Trump. And it was where they were talking about the Karen McDougal payment and arrangement that they were trying to settle. What did you make of Michael Cohen's explanation for why he made that recording, and also his decoding of what Trump meant when he said cash, which is such one word, but it's such a key word in that recording. He said cash. What did you make of that?
Well, look, the McDougal payment in and of itself is another instance of a problematic payment that clearly they have problems explaining why it is a payment of $150,000, again, through AMI, for which Pecker was not reimbursed for as well. Now, look, the idea that when he says cash doesn't necessarily mean greenbacks, that you're giving him an envelope of cash, but it's certainly an indication of something nefarious happening, something clandestine happening, something that they're trying to hide. It's not an obvious, overt conversation about trying to pay somebody in a fashion that you would normally pay somebody in a regular business transaction. It has a smell factor in the way that this was all done.
Abby,
Dante,
if I can,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't want to. I don't want to overlook the importance of that recording for a number of reasons. One, I'm an attorney. I would never. There's never a reason why I would record a meeting with any of my clients. So for that to happen and to exist is very, very problematic to me. But second, that's probably the only thing that really verifies what Michael Cohen is saying. And because you have that recording, other things that he's saying is believable. Imagine this case for the prosecution without that recording, without Donald Trump's voice at all ever acknowledging that he knew about this situation. So the fact that it was made is problematic, but it actually saved and probably is the only reason why this case was brought forward in the first place.
And
Well,
it also,
to
if I could
piggyback
interject,
off that-
I'm sorry. You know, it also corroborates the idea of the grossed up aspect of the payments that were made to Michael Cohen. You know, lawyers get paid. When I do a case, they cut me a check and I pay my taxes. My client doesn't say, oh, I'm going to cut you a check and I'm going to pay your taxes. So it's clear that the payment itself is just completely inappropriate the way it was done. And given the parsimonious nature of Donald Trump, the frugal nature of the kind of person he is, the idea that he would be paying Michael Cohen at least double what the $130,000 was, $130,000, and not know that this payment was being made for trumped up, lack of a better word, legal expenses is going to be very, very difficult road for the defense to deal with.
Kelly?
Well, to talk about the money for the first instance is the fact that it's cash, right? And there's always these ideas of why have cash, because there's no paper trail. And so allegedly Trump didn't like to communicate by email. So the fact that there was the money, that cash, is nefarious. And then going on to the point about recording your client. Now, it's important to remember that some states you have to get someone's permission in order to record them. But in New York, you do not need someone else's permission. If you're in a conversation with yourself, you don't have to seek someone else's permission. So it's kind of to make sure that you what is said is actually said and it's recorded.
That's true. The idea of a consent recording that Kelly's referring to in New York, you don't need, as long as one person consents to a conversation, you can record it. However, this is Cohen's least problem. It's an ethical violation always to tape record a client without their permission. But Cohen's ethic issues are not his biggest problem.
And he seemed to be aware of that. He said he's never done that before. He didn't do it since. And his explanation for it was that he needed it for David Pecker, to placate David Pecker, who was getting angry that he wasn't being repaid. Dante, I wonder what you make of all of these kind of revelations from Michael Cohen about Trump's sort of pattern of practice, how he conducted himself in his business. Kelly mentioned the email thing. That was a key point that he made. But he was very specific in describing Trump's motive for not being on email. Trump, according to Michael Cohen, said that he's seen too many people go down, meaning get in legal trouble, because there was a paper trail associated with email. There was that. There were some anecdotes about how Trump tried to not pay people, including Michael Cohen himself. What did you make of all of these anecdotes, and did it go to Michael Cohen's credibility?
I don't know if it went to Michael Cohen's credibility because what he's saying is actually accurate. I have a lot of high-profile clients, and a lot of them, especially if you've been in a high-profile position for a long time, you understand that if you have money, people feel like they're entitled to it, and they will come after you, and they will try to use whatever they can. And if anything is documented, it gives them credibility. So if you're exchanging emails with somebody, even if it's taken out of context, or they're saying, oh, we added something else later, the fact that an email exists kind of gives them a base of proof. So I know a lot of high-profile people who stay away from emails, who want to talk in kind of cold and make sure that nothing is being directly said, because even if they don't feel like they're doing something wrong, they feel like they're exposing themselves if they have a trail of communication with anybody. So I don't know if that necessarily is just a bad thing. It's a way that a lot of people operate at that level.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but Michael, I wonder, that adds to the difficulty for the prosecution here in trying to prove that last piece that Dante was alluding to, that last 1% that gets to did Trump explicitly direct this? Do you think that that's overcomeable for the prosecution?
Yes, I mean they have to show that he caused it to occur, and I think it is. I think it is overcomeable. The lack of emails, the prosecution's going to argue, is kind of how they may make the argument that's kind of how mob bosses run, right? You know, that's don't talk to me on the phone. Don't tape. I'm not going to keep any record of my conversations. The absence of emails in the world in which we live oftentimes speaks volumes. We all communicate with emails. We all talk on email, and I do agree it's the death knell for many a client I've had what's on the emails. But in a legitimate conversation, why aren't you talking in email? Why aren't you saying to Michael Cohen, thank you so much for making the for your legal bill in connection with X, Y, and Z, or something to corroborate that in fact it's a legitimate transaction. But I think it's clearly overcomeable, though.
But the other side to that is the defense, I'm sure, is going to show that Donald Trump just operates in a different kind of a world that some people, even the members of the jury, may not be used to. And if they can explain that he's operating because he's wary of people and use the example that Cohen, in fact, recorded a conversation. So that shows that's a perfect example of why Trump was so defensive against everybody. I think that is something that they can really hone in on and say, Trump operated this way. He also operated in a fashion of, you do it, right? Just do it. And however you got it done, he just relied on Cohen to get it done. And that's the one key piece, that 1%, as Abby, you just reminded us, that still, I think, is missing. They may be able to get there, but it's still missing.
Yeah,
That's why I think it's so. Oh.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Last word, Kelly.
What I was going to say is the whole micromanagement is really key, because that shows, it was brought by other witnesses as well, that how he micromanages people. So the fact that he micromanages people, that he wanted to know, obviously, if he told someone to go do it, what was going on. I think that's a key point to this case.
Yeah, it certainly is. And there are all kinds of different ways to look at the same pieces of evidence, which is what makes this really difficult to even know how the jury is ultimately going to interpret it. Everyone, stay with me. Donald Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, left little to the imagination on the stand today, spilling pretty much every detail into the frenzied effort to protect his boss in the lead up to the 2016 election. But it was what he revealed about the mastermind behind then-candidate Trump's response to the bombshell release of that Access Hollywood tape, the one that in that 2005 video where Trump said he would just go grab women by the you-know-what. Cohen revealed that it was actually Melania Trump's idea, Donald Trump's wife, to spin the whole thing as locker room talk. Our panel of legal experts is back with us now. Let's just play, actually, what she said at the time about this. Listen.
You describe kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You brag that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly, I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk.
Kelly, now this could be seen as, I don't know, just gossip. It is certainly new as someone who covered Trump in the presidency and at that time. It's new that came from Melania, but she herself repeated it in an interview with Anderson Cooper. So is this material? Does this go to how Melania interpreted these types of embarrassing stories as it relates to Trump?
It goes to a key argument from the defense. So it's important to remember that one of the defense argument in regards to the intent was the fact that Trump did this scheme because he was worried about his family, that he paid this money, had this money paid because he was worried how the story was going to affect his family. But now the fact that it comes out that his wife was telling him what to say, locker room talk, that she had knowledge of what was going on, that is going to strike the whole idea of defense's argument that he was doing this for his family, which is a strong point for the state's case.
Dante, do you agree with that? I mean, is it notable that Melania was a part of the spin when it came to what Michael Cohen described as a catastrophic moment for the Trump campaign?
It's notable. There's a couple of things notable about Melania that we need to discuss. The first thing is that she's not there. She has not been in court 1 second supporting him. And if this was all done to protect her, for her not to be here in this moment protecting him says a lot. Now you fast forward to Michael Cohen on the stand. He said some bad things about Melania, the relationship with Donald Trump today, including that Donald Trump said, "I can just replace my wife very easily."
Let me
So
let me
he
actually
wasn't
go ahead and
concerned.
read. Let me go ahead and read that part that you're talking about right now, so people can hear it
Yes.
directly from Michael Cohen. He said, "This is relaying what Trump said. Don't worry." He goes, "How long do you think I'll be on the market for? Not long." He wasn't thinking about Melania. Michael Cohen says this was all about the campaign. Dante.
Absolutely. So for Michael Cohen to say that Donald Trump said he can replace his wife, that's very cutting and showing that he really was not concerned about that relationship and that was not his motivation. Now, it's interesting to see on cross-examination, we know that Trump has influence over what his attorneys focus on. And we know that because of the Stormy Daniels cross-examination where it got very personal. Here, will Trump push them to go after Cohen on that and protect his wife, or at least to show that he cares about that comment? If he can't even protect her or make some pushback in cross-examination, why would the jury believe that he was concerned about protecting her when this information was on the line of coming out? So it's a lot that's happening with Melania and around this case. We'll see how the defense attorneys respond to that, and if they put up some defense or something to show that there was a strong relationship there between former President Donald Trump and his wife Melania.
Yeah, a good reminder that this is only half the story. We still have Cross coming later this week. But Michael, it wasn't just these anecdotes about Melania's comments about locker room talk. It wasn't just that Trump seemed to not care about the relationship, according to Michael Cohen. The other part that Cohen testified to was the idea that Trump did not want to pay Stormy Daniels at all until after the election, because after the election, he may not have to pay her because it wouldn't matter to him whether the story came out. I mean, how significant is that piece of testimony from Cohen?
I think that's a very significant piece. The fact that he knew that the timing of this could actually impact directly the campaign, that is when the payments were going to be made, I think it's very, very significant. You know, frankly, the fact that he paid Cohen even after he was in the White House, to me, is kind of an interesting thing. He could have said to Cohen, like he said to Becker, "Thanks for your work, but I'm not going to pay you," but he paid him anyway. And you know, it's interesting to me, like when you marry Donald Trump, when a person marries Donald Trump, they kind of know what they're getting. You know, his relationships, every marriage he had has been based upon some alleged infidelity with another person while he's been married. So I think Melania kind of knew who she was getting into bed with, proverbially. There was also talk about her trying to redo her prenuptial agreement at the time that Trump became president. But, you know, keeping in mind, though, when you have the Access Hollywood tape and there's a conversation in which he talks about locker room talk, that's still a whole lot different than some about things that may have happened before he was involved with Melania. That's a whole lot different than her hearing things occurring after she's married to him, or dealing with things that are occurring with women actually having that type of relationship. So you could certainly see the argument where Trump may have felt different about Melania hearing about actual affairs as compared to conversation where people are talking on a bus and about things he may have done in his earlier days. So I'm sure the defense will play with that.
Yeah,
That's a good point, because there's a
Dante,
difference.
Make the big bucks, Dante. Thank
before
you.
you jump in, Dante, I mean, I just want to note, it is a good point, and part of it is that, you know, we know this from our reporting as we've been reporting on the Trumps for a long time, but this kind of was alluded to in some of the testimony the last couple of weeks. There is a difference, pretty substantively, with how Trump reacted to, for example, the Karen McDougal allegations versus the Stormy Daniels allegations. They're not all the same thing in Trump world, and I think the defense probably could make an argument that that Access Hollywood is one thing, but an affair with a porn star is another, and an affair with a woman who that may have gone on for longer than just a one-night stand is also another thing as well.
Absolutely, and Michael did make an absolute good point. That's why he makes the big bucks, as he said. But It's interesting how hard the attack was against Stormy Daniels, even in this trial last week, where Donald Trump's team is still pushing this, that it did not happen. And for some reason, despite the fact that that 2016 election is over, and we all know that this information is out, and I don't think a lot of people think it's going to have impact on this upcoming election, he's still denying it. So maybe there is some truth to the point that, there's a reason why, whether it didn't happen or he still is denying it to his wife and wants to protect her and convince her that it did not happen. Maybe that's why they're pushing so hard, and that may be part of their defense when it comes up to it, that he still is saying that this did not happen. He's still adamant about it, and the election is over for 2016. So clearly that's not the reason. The reason is the relationship with Melania.
So Kelly,
Abby,
go ahead, Michael. I'll let you respond.
Yeah. It's not. You had asked earlier about the cross-examination about these Melania conversations. If I was a defense lawyer, I would not go near it. Cohen is going to say it happened. There's no corroboration for it. And I think that could actually be offensive to a juror, the fact that he's saying that was said. And I would just say, look, ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of person Michael Cohen is. This never happened. Cross-examining on it, all it does is give it credence and it gets it repeated. I would stay away from it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a rabbit hole that can be fallen into by going down a road that maybe their client wants you to go down but is not germane to the case. Last thing, Kelly, on that very point, this is sort of like half of the conversation. Everything looks great when the prosecution is making their case, but then there's cross-examination, and they're going to be going hard on Michael Cohen's credibility. They're going to be going hard on his ambition, his bitterness that was apparent even in those early days when Trump won the election. This is not over, right?
It's definitely not over. They are going to attack him. They're going to attack his credibility. They're going to call him a liar, liar, and liar. We have to remember he lied to Congress. They're going to hit him with he's a convicted felon. And how do we know that he's telling the truth now? They're going to try and poke at holes and be very, very aggressive towards him, that he can't know what Trump's intent was, because he did not know what Trump's state of mind is. And that's going to be a real key argument on cross-examination. What was Trump's intent? Was Trump's intent because of his family, or was Trump's intent the campaign? But the timing is key. We have to remember the timing of when that Access Hollywood came out and then when Stormy Daniels was paid approximately 2 weeks later.
Yeah. All right, Dante, Kelly, and Michael, thank you all for all of that analysis, but stay with us, more ahead. And my panel is back with me now. I want you to each put your defense attorney hats on here as we look forward to the rest of the week. Their job essentially is to put on the table innocuous explanation for all the allegedly damaging things that Michael Cohen claims that Donald Trump did and said. Dante, I wonder if you're defending Donald Trump in this instance, what's the thing that you would go after first?
I'm using a lot of the words that were just said in that video. He's bitter. He's defeated. He's upset that Trump kept him at bay and did not bring him to the White House. I'm just trying to make him look like a liar who has a vendetta. But the issue is, the prosecution brought out today, he said, I lied for Trump. So when I'm making him look like a liar, it's tough when he's pushing back, saying, well, the only reason I lied was to protect Donald Trump.
Michael, I wonder what you make of the decision to pay Michael Cohen not a lump sum, which actually he said he was expecting. He was expecting to get that $400,000 all at once, but to pay him in these increments of $35,000 each month over the course of a year. Is there a reasonable explanation other than Trump trying to conceal those payments that the defense needs to present to the jury to give them something else to chew on?
Well, what I think he was trying to do was make it look like legal payments. Oftentimes you hire a lawyer and you pay him in installments. You pay him based upon the hours he's being put in. Of course, there's no billables here that Michael Cohen has put over invoices. But so that's not an unusual thing to get paid. Look, the converse is, it could have been Trump's way of making sure that Cohen remained on Team Trump. That is, you want to keep on getting your payments, you better keep your mouth shut. And it kept on for a year. while those payments were happening. So, but if I was crossing Cohen, I would take out those books. I'd say revenge and disloyal. That's what Michael Cohen is.
Kelly, do you think that the defense will have an easy or a difficult time trying to, that maybe it's 1% or maybe it's 10%, that the prosecution hasn't closed that gap in terms of Trump's knowledge and intent? Do you think that they're going to be able to exploit that in their cross-examination of Michael Cohen this week?
Their key defense is going to be the fact that he's a liar. They're going to discredit him by the fact that he's lied in the past and there's no proof that he's lying now. And also, how does he know what was Donald Trump's intent? And key, that he wants revenge. So the whole reason he's doing this is solely for revenge, to get back at Trump for not getting a job in the White House.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of Michael Cohen's anger for not getting Trump kind of screwed him in a couple of ways, Dante. At the end there, he didn't give him his full bonus. He didn't give him the White House job that he really wanted. And Michael Cohen was already angry. This was before they really parted ways. So there is already on the table a lot that the prosecution, by the way, I should note, they still have some time tomorrow. They intend to continue, it sounds like, their direct of Michael Cohen. But do they have to kind of address that head on before the defense kind of takes it and runs with it?
I think they tried to do that today. And they may have done the best they could to say, they brought out the fact that he liked Trump and how enamored he was with Trump. They didn't just start out with the bad of the relationship. They established that it was good, but then it soured. But then again, he made it clear that when he looks back on his life at that time period, he believes he was a bad person because he was protecting Donald Trump, and he doesn't want to be that person anymore. So to your last question about that 1% or 10% that's still left open, can the defense exploit it? They're going to have to do that. I don't know if they're going to be able to just say he's a liar and leave it at that. But what they can say is, you don't know if Donald Trump ever looked at the books or had any information on that. I think they need to focus on that. Yes, hit him, make it clear that he's a liar, but then move on to something substantive and focus it on the fact that he did not see those books. He was never in a room with Trump and Weissenberg or anybody else when those books were discussed.
All right, Dante, Kelly, Michael, thank you all very much for great conversation this hour. See you next time.